The courtroom was silent. All eyes were on the judge, a man who had never lost control of his court, a man who had built his career on power, privilege, and prejudice. Then he saw her, a young black attorney standing tall, confident, unapologetic. Judge Harrington's lips curled in disgust. He leaned forward, voice dripping with condescension. "You're in the wrong courtroom, miss. Whatever your name is, this place is for real lawyers." Laughter rippled through the room, but she didn't flinch, not even a blink, because what the judge didn't know was that in just a few minutes, his entire world was about to crumble. And when justice strikes back, it doesn't just hit, it destroys. Stay till the end, because this story, you won't believe how it ends. The courtroom air was thick with tension. Judge Harrington adjusted his robe, a smug smirk playing on his lips as he leaned back in his chair. Across from him, Maya Brooks stood tall, a young black attorney with a razor-sharp mind and a reputation for winning impossible cases. She had worked twice as hard, fought 10 times as much, just to stand in that courtroom. But to Judge Harrington, she was nothing. "You must be lost," the judge sneered. "Perhaps you thought this was one of those social justice hearings?" Laughter rippled through the courtroom. Other lawyers, clerks, even the jury smirked. Maya's jaw clenched, not in anger, not in humiliation, but in calculation. She had anticipated this, and she was ready. Calmly, she placed a single document on the bench. "Actually, Your Honor," Maya said smoothly, "I believe you're the one who's lost." The judge's smirk faded. "Excuse me?" Maya tapped the document with a single finger. "This is a judicial misconduct report filed against you last week." The smirks around the room vanished. The courtroom shifted. Judge Harrington's face twitched. Maya tilted her head, her voice cool and controlled. "Tell me, Your Honor." She paused, watching him squirm. "Would you like to read the list of charges against you? Or should I do it out loud for the jury to hear?" Boom. The entire courtroom froze. For the first time in his career, Judge Harrington was on trial. What's inside the report? And why does the judge look like he's just seen a ghost? The courtroom was dead silent. The power shift was instant. Judge Harrington's smug confidence cracked like glass under pressure. He snatched the document, his fingers twitching as he scanned the pages. Then, his face went pale. Maya crossed her arms. She already knew what he was reading. Bribery, tampering with evidence, racial discrimination in sentencing. And the worst part? It was all backed by irrefutable proof. Harrington cleared his throat, forcing a weak chuckle. "Miss Brooks, this is ridiculous. You really think you can—" "I don't think," Maya interrupted, her voice sharp. "I know." The audience shifted in their seats. She wasn't just accusing him, she was exposing him. She stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "You've silenced attorneys before. You've thrown out cases, covered your tracks." Maya tilted her head, her eyes locking onto his. But today, her lips curled into a knowing smirk. "You ran out of places to hide." A low murmur spread through the room. Even the jury was whispering now. Then, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "Your Honor, should we continue this case, or should we discuss your misconduct first?" The voice came from the prosecutor's bench. Harrington's own colleagues were turning against him. His own people were beginning to see the cracks. For the first time, the judge was the one on trial. And Maya, she had just made her first move. How deep does the corruption go? And what's Maya's next move? Judge Harrington's grip on the document tightened, his knuckles turning white. His world was unraveling. Maya could see it, the way his eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, for control. but there was none left. She wasn't done yet. "Let's talk about your sentencing history, Your Honor," Maya continued, her voice unwavering. "Would you like me to remind the court how black defendants received an average of 40% harsher sentences in your courtroom?" A gasp rippled through the audience. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Harrington slammed his gavel. "Enough!" But his voice cracked. And Maya? She smiled. She had him. She turned, picking up a second file. "This," she held it up, "is a list of every questionable ruling you've made in the past 10 years. Hundreds of appeals, cases thrown out, lives ruined." The courtroom exploded into hushed whispers. The judge's own clerk looked horrified. And then, the final blow. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. Harrington's eyes widened. Fear. "This," she said, her voice slow, controlled, merciless, "contains recorded conversations between you and private prosecutors, proving your backdoor deals." The jury foreman sat forward. The bailiff's hand moved toward his radio. Maya took one slow step toward the bench. "Now," she whispered, "shall I press play?" Harrington froze. He knew, everyone knew. His empire wasn't just crumbling, it was burning, and he had nowhere left to run. "What's on the recordings, and how much further will Maya go?" The air in the courtroom thickened, like a storm was about to break. Judge Harrington sat paralyzed, his face drained of color. The USB drive in Maya's hand was small, but to him, it was a loaded weapon. Maya let the silence drag, then she spoke, calm, confident, ruthless. "This drive contains wiretapped phone calls between you and high-profile prosecutors. Conversations where you traded justice for favors, where you sold verdicts to the highest bidder." The whispers in the courtroom grew louder. Judge Harrington shook his head, forcing a laugh. "This is absurd. There's no way those recordings are real." Maya's smirk widened. "Oh, but they are." She turned to the court stenographer. "Would you mind playing the first clip?" A click. Then, a voice filled the room. "Just make sure the jury never hears the full testimony. If you do that, I'll make sure your son gets that internship at my firm." A pause. Then, Harrington's own voice. "Consider it done." The courtroom erupted. The jury foreman's jaw dropped. The prosecutors exchanged stunned glances. Even Harrington's defense team looked shaken. Maya wasn't finished. She turned toward the bailiff. "Do your job," she said. For a split second, no one moved. Then, the bailiff stepped forward. Handcuffs gleamed. Judge Harrington finally snapped. "You think you can do this to me?" he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "I made this system. I own this courtroom." Maya's expression was cold as steel. "Not anymore." The gavel fell, not from the judge's hand, but from the court officer removing him from the bench. Judge Harrington, the man who had humiliated her, who had held power over so many, was being dragged out in cuffs. And Maya, she stood tall because justice had just struck back. Is this the end of Judge Harrington, or does he have one last move left? The courtroom was chaos. Reporters whispered, attorneys exchanged nervous glances, and even the jury sat frozen in shock. Judge Harrington's robe was disheveled, his once powerful presence now reduced to a man on the brink of ruin. The bailiffs tightened their grip on him. His empire was falling and Maya Brooks had done it. But just before he crossed the threshold, he stopped. Slowly, he turned his head, locking his cold, venomous eyes onto Maya. Then he smirked. A smirk that sent a chill down her spine. "You think this is over?" His voice was low, almost amused. "I made this system. I controlled everything." Maya's expression was cold as steel. "Not anymore." Harrington chuckled, a slow, taunting laugh. Then he leaned in slightly, just close enough for only Maya to hear. "Enjoy your victory, Maya. But power never disappears. It just changes hands." The words hung in the air, dripping with a hidden meaning. A meaning that made the entire room go silent. Maya's heart didn't race. She didn't flinch. But she knew that smirk. She knew that kind of man. Harrington finally turned, letting the bailiffs haul him away. The doors slammed shut behind him. The courtroom exhaled. People murmured in disbelief, some even clapped. But Maya, she didn't celebrate, because deep down she knew this wasn't over. What power shift is Harrington hinting at, and is Maya ready for what's coming next? The courtroom was empty now. The cameras had left. The reporters had their headlines. "Corrupt judge exposed, dragged out in handcuffs." But Maya? She knew this wasn't the end. She stood by the window of her office, looking out at the city. The skyline shimmered, a battlefield of power, influence, and secrets. Then, her phone buzzed, a blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. Silence. Then, a slow, measured breath on the other end. A voice she recognized instantly. Judge Harrington. "You played your hand well, Maya," he said smoothly. "I underestimated you." Her grip tightened around the phone. "Enjoy your victory, but power never disappears. It just changes hands." Click. The line went dead. Maya didn't move. She stared at the screen, her pulse steady, not in fear but in anticipation. Harrington thought he could play this game? He had no idea who he was up against. She placed the phone down, her reflection staring back at her in the window. This wasn't just about justice anymore. This was war. And Maya Brooks? She never lost.